Fine. Well, I learned different.
Yes.
And,
So now why isn't that thing working? Let me push a button on this thing. Sorry.
okay. Oh, no.
Start the video. What's going on here?
Is it connected to the owl? The video?
We're trying to. I don't know what's going on here. Why is it giving us any trouble at all? I've never had any trouble with it before.
Well, Rob, sounds like you broke it.
Did you unplug the USB and plug it back in?
Yes.
Because that worked for me the other day. Well, I have video back, but it's you.
There you are.
Rob.
I don't know why it's giving us any trouble at all here. Try it again.
Get on the other day, Rob. Conservation.
I'm wondering if somebody might.
Need to crawl under. How are you? Hopefully I didn't get
Wonderful chicken breast curry tonight.
After visiting.
They're not strong curries.
It's plugged in.
Should I just send you
No, it's wonderful.
You can try that. Let's try it. It's lighting up. I wonder if somebody pulled on this too.
No, there's a light on it. It has power.
Yeah, power. Not talking to the computer.
Yeah, what's going on here?
$1,000 a month.
Try that. Here we go. I think it's gonna work now.
Turn it on.
Ready? Bingo. You got it.
What did you do? Just knock button?
Turn
There
it
was
on.
somebody had pushed a power button on that. I've never turned it off ever, so I don't know why it would do that. We're in business.
Yay.
So we all set, Rob?
Yeah.
All right. It's at 7 o'clock. I'll call this meeting of the Anfield Budget Committee to order. We have a pretty full plate tonight. So we'll do it. Before we go on, I'll say Sam and Dan both got in touch with me and are excused. Dan may zoom in if he can. Sam had a family member tonight, so Dan's traveling. So they will not be joining us this evening. All right, we'll go ahead and get started with approval of the prior minutes. Are there corrections or comments, suggestions for the minutes from the last meeting?
I make a motion to accept the minutes as printed.
I was talking the discussion.
Any discussion of the,
I have a minor correction.
okay,
The first paragraph, new business, the way it's written says that the statutes require us to discuss wages for a specific individual in a non-public session. I don't think they do, they allow it.
yes,
So it should take, you need to rewrite that. It should not say per state statute, it should say as allowed by state statute.
yeah. Did you get that, Emily? Okay. Would you adjust your motion to be as amended?
I make a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved as amended. All right. So we do have space around the table for folks to come and join us, particularly as we're going through a particular budget. And unless there's a scheduled reason to do otherwise, we'll just go in the order as printed in the minutes, sorry, in the agenda. And you can, if you can let us know, we have the same printout we all have, we want to make sure we're all looking at the exact same page. We'll start with Recreation Department.
That would be me and Matt and Bridget.
Yes. We mix-
There's a spot right here for somebody. I'm happy to trade my spot too. Christina, that's the other
She's gonna
one.
follow me wherever I
She's
Eric,
got-
Okay.
Yes, Bridget.
Do you want me to go through the budget or you want to have Emily and Matt go and then we'll talk about?
Whatever would work the best. What we need to know is which page on our budget printout we're looking at. And then a brief summary of any items that you want to hit is fine, but we'd really like to focus on big changes from prior years. And then any questions people have. So which page is recreation?
Page 52 is recreation.
52.
52. So as you may know, just as a introduction, the Recreation Commission has been meeting for quite a period of time to take a look at what it is to do now for recreation. They have done a substantial amount of surveys in the community about what people might want for recreation. And I'm expecting that they'll tell you kind of what the recommendations are, of where they think, based on their conversation with the community, where it ought to go forward. So that's kind of the background. We established the Recreation Commission to get some feedback from them about how are things working now and what are their thoughts about going forward. So with that as predicate, I'll turn it over to whoever's going to be the spokesman for it.
So you all know me as Emily Curtis. I am also the chair of the Recreation Commission. We were newly formed in April of this year. We had 4 members who were elected by the Board of Selectmen, which created our group of 5. So we have been meeting with Bridget and Ed through the last few months to kind of understand all of the pieces of recreation, including pieces of where we've been, pieces of where we are now and where we've been in the last 2 years, and also pieces of where we can kind of see ourselves moving from here. And so in all of those conversations we have talked about, so right now we are currently a department that has the formal Enfield recreation position, which is part-time, which was served by Ed Winters, who has resigned from his position within the last couple of weeks. And then we also have the Mascoma Valley Regional Parks and Rec Coordinator, Bridget, is that correct? It's always a little, making sure I get that title correct, which is also a part-time position. And there is some regional focus, but then there's also focus on specific Enfield residents with the Enfield director. Sorry, excuse us. Parenting never turns off, so.
And just as a little more backdrop, if you will, you know, Bridget's kind of role and the financing for that was created out of the collaborative or regional concept that, you know, recreation would be advanced to Kingman and perhaps other communities, and Kingman was picking in some dough to kind of fund that. Their funding ended, which was in many ways the precipient event that kind of fired up the commission to kind of take a look at this with the thrust and as subject to where you guys went, because I don't know everything you talked about, that, you know, if we're going to focus on recreation for Enfield, let's focus on the cost of programs and the revenue from Enfield at a certain price. And then let's look at inviting, when we can, other people from the other regions, other towns to participate at perhaps a different rate, because, you know, some of the revenues or some of the costs of the programmers already would be arguably subsidized by Enfield taxpayers, obviously they shouldn't pay the same amount as somebody from outside who's not paying some. So that's just kind of a broad construct of, you know, how do we maintain an openness about recreation to anybody? and establish kind of a pricing methodology and a core that reflects what Anfield wants. Kind of buffered by participation from others who are paid to participate. If that doesn't throw you off, then you keep on going.
Yes, and so the opportunity has presented itself. Bridget did a phenomenal survey that went out to residents, and we received feedback from hundreds. Actually, I think approximately 250 were specifically Enfield residents, and over 179 of those respondents actually had ideas of programming that they would like to see or have implemented in Enfield. So, and of those 179, yes, some overlapped, but the idea that the things that we took from that survey were to say that our residents, see pieces of what we have here, but we are also seeing that there are some places where our residents would actually like to see something else. And that included respondents from the age of 18 to over 65. And so we got a lot of feedback from a very broad kind of spectrum of our residents, which really meant a lot to us as recreation, and to understand, that we have a very, wonderfully and beautifully diverse community. We have all of these amazing resources from our lakes to, all of the clubs and organizations that we have that we can really collaborate with and support as a community. But there's also a lot of opportunities for supporting area businesses and drawing people to our town. One of the things that I was thinking of is how many times have I looked at Lebanon and Hanover as opportunities for my children to participate in something because it just isn't offered in Enfield. And so, those kinds of things keep me thinking, like, I want to keep our money in Enfield. I want to keep that money coming into our town, but also have those opportunities for our residents too. Matt, did you have anything?
The basic idea was to combine the two organizations under one roof to better maintain the programming that's already happening, and then also expand the programming that's already happening. We've been able to exceed revenue budget last summer on summer camp with somebody who was working a little over 10 hours a week. If we have a full-time person in place, the logistical aspects of things like summer camps or other rec camps, or even all age programming like chair yoga, finding grant funding, all of those things become more possible and will be done more efficiently than they have been previously. We've got a lot of opportunity coming up with COVID starting to wane, and group gatherings hopefully will start coming out again when it starts getting nicer out. And I think with Ed leaving, and group gatherings will eventually in the next year start to happen again. We're on the precipice of being able to offer some really great programming and maintain the programming we already have. The rec director is going to be able to keep in line the programs we have, follow up on delinquent accounts, provide staffing, follow up on training for that staffing. And then also one of the reasons we wanted to have one person was that central point of communication for the community, Enfield and the surrounding areas, for other recreational information, even if it's not facilitated by the rec department. You can go to any town in this area and call their rec department and they'll tell you what's available to do outside, inside, adult programming, youth programming. And right now, we don't have that one hub of information that can maintain contact and relationships with area organizations like conservation societies or trail societies. That will be that place where people can go or people can call and get information that draws them into this town that will inevitably fund other businesses in this town. So it was a reorganization and a cleaning up of our own house and bringing everything under one roof. And then from there, hopefully getting us to a point where we're somewhat net neutral in the next couple of years. And that obviously is the goal of this committee, is to make sure that we're doing something that's fiscally prudent. That's hard to say in the next year, because a lot of programming that wasn't offered in the last 2 years will be. And we don't know what that's necessarily going to look like. We can look at 2018 numbers and we can look at some 2019 numbers. 2020 is pretty much shot. So we're not sure where it's going to go, but we did see in 2021 an increase in participation in programs. So I think that it would be a good idea to kind of not have 3 different chefs in the same kitchen. and just try to bring everything under one roof and reorganize it in a way that is efficient and will hopefully at some point soon get us to a point where we can self-fund some of these programs.
And I do want to add that all of these ideas have come with the support directly from Bridget and Ed all along the way. You know, it wasn't something that's kind of like we came to a meeting and we were like, oh, that's a great idea, let's do it. It was a long conversation over several months. But again, it has the support of Bridget and Ed coming into it, understanding that there are other capacities that we can be fulfilling, both as a recreation department, but as well as to our residents. And that can extend even as far as, you know, adding online payment systems, which makes it more convenient for our residents for sure. But it also makes payment more accessible. It makes our payments more consistent. You know, having someone physically in the building, in our town offices to represent recreation is a huge asset. I myself, being in the building next door, have fielded phone calls regarding recreation, or even had town clerk call me and ask me questions because they know I have some idea of what's going on. But when they're receiving payments and things of that nature, it is challenging to not have a personal interface. But, you know, our recreation directors are phenomenal, but they're part-time, which, you know, and having two part-time makes it just that much more kind of difficult and haphazard to kind of bring all those pieces and people together.
We also didn't take a total shot in the dark on the salary either. We did our research, we looked into it, similar town sizes, similar demographic areas, and we plopped ourselves right down in the middle of 50,000. I do believe that that's a fair and expected salary for somebody that would be taking on the responsibilities that are currently being taken on by two people part-time, and then a whole lot more.
If you haven't, what were the revenues for 2021? If you haven't,
Revenues that I saw were 29,000. And actually one of our ideas, so I think that there was an estimated 25,000 for revenue. There was actually 29,000 for revenue accounted for, which actually does not account for some outstanding payments that are due. But then on top of that, one of the things that we had discussed was having a full-time director may create more capacity for adding weeks onto that. Because as a parent in the school district, I know that, you know, our summer program only accounts for maybe 3/4, just a little bit more than 3/4 of the actual summer when our kids are out of school, and finding care for that is extremely challenging in the Upper Valley. Exactly, it's challenging, it's expensive, but we feel that with a full-time director, we would actually be able to add 1, even up to 3 weeks of programming if one person can find the staff and support that they need to be able to do so. But even in doing that, if you know, we had a director who was able to really focus on executing that could be another $15,000 in the bank.
I'm going to give you a little background on me. My name is Matt, by the way. Hi, everybody. I'm Director of Operations of the Upper Valley Aquatic Center. One of the things we saw in 2021 that actually kind of took us aback was we had originally planned 9 weeks of summer camp, and we ended up doing 11 because we had such high demand. Every single week sold out within 2 weeks of it being listed. And we had such a long wait list that we expanded our camp. The programs that exceeded budget for the fiscal year, our fiscal year is October 1, that exceeded budget for last fiscal year were swim lessons, splash camp, our summer and vacation camp, and our swim team. People are ready to get back to this. And as she explained, childcare is hard to find in general, but it's not just about the youth programming either. We've seen an increase in demand of our classes. We've seen an increase in the number of questions that have been asked about when are we going to bring in other types of classes for older generations, adult classes. So he mentioned 29, I had seen 31, but I think that accounts for the uncollected dues from the last couple of years. And that's the other thing. If we've got 2 10-hour people trying to organize these programs and execute them, it doesn't leave a lot of room to follow up on delinquent accounts. So that's money lost. That is technically supposed to be there.
Does anyone know, like if you estimated the worst case scenario, like you're saying 50,000 salary, but if you add benefits and all of that, like what we're talking about for total cost for that person?
What's our overhead rate just currently? Jack, do you have that number?
Lisa? You're on.
So if you have a family plan, health insurance, the total benefit package is going to be about $35,000.
She's saying 35.
Yeah, that's the
35.
worst, the worst case.
Right.
So worst case would be 85,000 with the maximum salary and maximum benefits.
And have you had a chance to take a stab at the projected revenue that arguably might come from increased activities from a full-time position?
I mean, honestly, we focused on the summer camp because it was both serving the need of residents with children in the school district, as well as it was also one of kind of the most popular and revenue producing. But I do know that there are other opportunities, but we don't have a really good pulse on all of those numbers and things because we have kind of the year of COVID, we have a changeover in directors in the last 2 to 3 years. So we don't really have a consistent picture to work with, but the one piece that we do have to work with, we know that, I mean, based off of what we've seen, that can account for about $45,000 in revenue alone, which that's the summer camp.
So no, you don't have a comprehensive
No.
understanding, but you know 45K will come from the summer program.
That's our
the
best
estimate.
estimate is yes.
A
This
little
is-
over 45.
Yeah, it's also not, the salary is also not 50,000 new dollars. We're already paying a good chunk of that to 2 people.
20,000.
How about, yeah.
I thought it was more than that.
I think,
How much
I
are we
only
paying
know,
currently, Lisa?
Okay, the date shows 29.
Plus 48 down on the regional. So year-to-date's about 35.
What would happen to those 2 people that are part-time right now?
Well, Ed's already resigned, and so, and I think Bridget, we're both, all Bridget and Ed and I, and the commission have talked that if this program were to evolve, then in all likelihood, they wouldn't be doing this anymore, and they were fine with that, because I think their interest was responsive to the needs that they felt they were identifying in the community.
It sounds like they're gonna go find other jobs and they're okay with that.
They
Yeah,
actually
they
already
already
both
have
have full-time jobs
Okay.
and they're doing this additionally.
So I'm wondering if there's any sort of comprehensive plan of like what's been happening and sort of the overall revenues, COVID or not COVID, and then is there a written plan for future programs and what the projected revenue would be for that?
Projected revenue for if we stayed the same or if we go with
No.
something else.
if we combine them.
Right,
Go from where you are to where you think.
right, right.
So I think that's a hard thing to answer in some ways,
Yeah, kind of what we.
because it would be a totally different person coming in with a completely different, possibly a different point of view, a lot more time. I can tell you, Enfield Recreation, some of the big things are Halloween, Christmas, summer camp. Summer camp's the biggest thing. For my area, for Mascoma Valley Parks and Rec, I have Challenger soccer camp, theater camp, volleyball camp, basketball camp, after school ski program, cross country ski program. Well, and of course we have line dancing and we have chair yoga, which is currently back with Enfield Recreation. So there's a lot of programs right now. And I also had, I was running the farmers market. So I was doing as much as I could to kind of expand that, which I think we had a pretty successful summer of expanding that. I have to say, I don't have all of my final numbers yet. I have to grab that from my spreadsheet on the farmers market, but I think from the feedback, as Emily said, I put the survey out there last winter because it was pretty quiet and I figured this was a good time to collect that information. But both Ed and I knew that we didn't have the capacity to do all of the things that people would like to see. We just can't. You can't have somebody working 10 or even 20 hours a week and be able to be in all of the places and find grant money and expand on programming. It's really, really hard.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
So, but that's what people are asking for, and that's what people would like to see. They would like to see more. We have Mascoma Youth Sports League, which I sit on the board for just because of my position, and that's kindergarten through 6th grade. People want to see preschool, and that's kind of on them, or it could be on us in recreation. I mean, that's, there's a big picture, and a lot of. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Bridget. No, I was just gonna kind of add on to what you were saying about how you were talking about MYSL, and we also have other community efforts such as the library and other groups that meet with them that we could really be coordinating and supporting as well.
It sounds like you guys are asking for about a 30 grand bump to hire a full-time rec director, and that will give us probably a much better rec department, better services for people. And if we make the right hire, we could see an increase in revenues. We'll certainly see better programs and more consistent collection. That sound about right?
You're also gonna see a decrease in payroll hours spent on things like facility management, field management, because you're not gonna have 4 people trying to coordinate the effort of making sure something gets repaired or communicated that it's broken.
Sure.
You've got one person. You're making the
Yes.
system more efficient, and you're gonna save money on payroll.
Part of-
I think the answer is yes.
Yes, one of our recommendations actually was that a rec director could also partake in things such as like our assistant town manager is currently the one that schedules all of our facilities and buildings and things of that nature. If we have a recreation director who's going to be responsible for managing these fields and community building or all of these other pieces, adding that piece, it seems a natural fit. And it would still benefit our town management and our town government by having that assistant town manager able to focus on other areas of their work.
Just one last thing I want to point out. This is happening now. It's because, of a lot of things, but it's good timing with, Ed vacating the position, but we've also talked to the master planning committee. Because if you're talking about the long-term plan of this town, recreation is a part of that. Whether it's one of the 5 areas they are actively focusing on, it touches every one of those 5 areas. Residential, land use, everything. So I don't see a better time to start talking about improving the recreation in this town. A lot of people come to this town to do things that they may not know where to find the information, they may not know who facilitates it, and we can have at least that part of it done.
Where's the line? I was taking it to be 08112. Where's, but maybe that's not it. Where's the line that gives the salaries, the current salaries for the 2 people?
All the way at the top, you're
It's-
probably not seeing it.
It's a combination. So the 08112 is the regional rec personnel line. The very top line, 01112, is the recreation personnel, the Enfield rec.
Okay,
And so if you look at our year-to-date actual, it's the 29
got it.
plus the 48. So
I
plus
see.
the out of the end, so it's, 35. And
So that's the current, the actual, that's what we're paying now for the 2.
well, that's what we have paid so far. in
Right,
2024.
And there would be supplemental staff that would be hired in the summer, such as, lifeguards, counselors to help with the summer camp, things like that, which would come out of a different line. Just to note
So
that.
as the presented budget's written, the 70,000 would include summer lifeguard, summer staff for camp. Plus the
It would
position.
include all the supplemental.
Correct.
Yes.
So it's not a $70,000 salary. It's a
Right.
$50,000 salary, and 20,000 another
Okay.
staffing.
I like it a lot. I hope we can fit it in.
Anecdotally, so Ed was suggesting that the increase in program fees are correct. April. Now, we don't have those details yet, that's just a projection. And you're gonna have to pass a budget at town meeting, advertise for a few months, decide when, if we did something, when you're gonna be able to hire somebody who's gonna be in the summer season. So, there's a lot of unknowns. This is really a commitment, I guess, to the commission's work about what they perceive the community needs to be. And I guess a certain give take on where the numbers are actually going to end up. Obviously, we're going to know where the costs are, well, to some extent. Because obviously, if you don't hire the person for fall, for the summer season, those numbers are going to be lower. the revenue's also kind of lagged a bit. So, you know, there's not a, there can't really be the sort of clear picture that you otherwise might like. I don't think.
Gee, yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions about the budget, actually. So my first question is about, it ends in 430 park maintenance, and it says includes $180 annual water rights to Shaker Rec Park. Can someone explain that?
I think Lisa can.
Sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
The $180 for annual water rights for Shaker Rec Park?
Yep. That's the water spigot on the shed that's down in the Shaker rec field.
Okay.
So I have a feeling we're tapped into the, that lower Shaker Village, I think is what they call it. I could be wrong. I saw.
So the town
Sorry.
doesn't own that? Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe so.
Okay. And then my other question is, line 115, regional rec programming. The 2021 budget was 13,000. We've only used 5488 and we're asking for 13. So what does that cover?
So I'm trying to see all of the numbers because I don't feel like my pages are matching up.
That's
Um,
that part of what we've been talking about. You combine that with the.
So the regional rec programming would be a lot of those camps that I was probably discussing. And would be, so I guess I look at it as we've decided we're going to put X amount of dollars into recreation because it's something that we want in our town. I'm hoping to see those programs grow more. I think that, so the theater camp was definitely a lower number of kids than normal. And so that number would have been a little different had I hired more camp staff, but I didn't have to because I didn't have as many kids. Last winter, we had the after school ski program. There definitely were not as many kids. I think I had, I want to say around 25, we'll say, I'm averaging. And normally from what I had heard, they have at least a full bus. We couldn't fill the bus the same way last year because of COVID. So it technically was full. But I think there's at least twice as many for that. So that means I either would have another bus, which would be another fee. There's kind of things like that. We didn't have the cross-country ski program at the elementary school, which we are having this year. So there will be a cost for that bus to run the EVS kids over to Canaan.
We've never run a bus for that before. Is that new?
It is. It is, because I have heard that it would be a lot more convenient for parents because of the timing, and it would help kids participate who couldn't otherwise.
Jane, is your question, how come we're not spending the budget there the last couple of years?
The programming?
Is that what
Budget?
you're asking, Gene?
Well, I mean, more or less. I mean, she answered the question.
And I can tell, I mean, I've only been in the role since
No, but we can't
last
blame
November.
on everything.
We can blame it for everything it's responsible for.
I can only,
I can add a little something. So the regional rec program sometimes pays for instructors for classes. And because of COVID, some of those things didn't happen. And some places I know that, well, it probably comes under the Enfield recreation programming. They used to have 3 stretching classes every week, down to 1, because they lost an instructor. She had a baby and she quit. So there's just, it's really just COVID, and, you know, some of it is, you know, the programs that aren't happening because of the COVID.
It's been 2 summers really, right? So
Yeah.
you can't really look at the 2020 actual theater because most of 2020, everything was canceled. So
And
you
I
say
would-
he's starting May 1st. I'm assuming that date is going to get moved up a lot with Ed resigning. Right, and then also, you know, by May 1st, camps for summer already fill up. So if you want to expand your summer camp, you would have to start that sooner. So my comment is actually, I would move that date up.
Probably wouldn't want to hire much after.
Part of the preparation and the timeline, unfortunately, is understanding when the budget is passed and when that's
Right.
passed at town meeting. And so it would be preemptive to hire someone prior to the budget being approved at town meeting. I don't think we would be able to do that, which is where those timelines kind of butt right up against each other. I'm not sure what that would look like or how we could kind of work with
Right.
that.
The only thing I don't know if this is allowed or not, but the budget, so you have a bottom line budget approved. If you change the position from part-time to full-time within the same year, is that up to the select board?
Well, you have to have a gross appropriated budget. for the
Why
money
can't you
intend
do it
to
like
spend.
this?
You really can't spend more than is appropriated.
Right, but you can
So
move
if-
money between line items all you want.
Yeah, but you'd have to identify the available fund unused from some other area to fund the
Right.
need change.
There's $20,000 right here on the line items within the own rec department.
Yeah. If you don't spend them to execute the rec department.
Right.
Right,
But
so
By
like,
the end of the year, yeah.
it's tough to say that there'd be $20,000 laying around somewhere that you know would be unused.
well, it's right here.
That
Right,
you know would be unused.
in the next month and a half.
What, which line items are you referring
There's
to?
14,500 for regional rec personnel, you only spent 5, and there's 13,000 for regional rec programming, you only spent 5.
Maybe I'm missing where you're going. Can you suggest like that?
There's money available within the whole rec budget to increase. There's money available within, like, the whole rec department is underspending right now. Could you move up the days? of
Doesn't
going-
that beg the decision that we would expect from both this group and the select board about whether they, what sort of position they want, whether part-time or full-time, and whether they want to make that decision? Doesn't that beg the question? Or are you talking that you all would support I move to full-time
Sooner,
sooner rather than later and do
I
it
would.
where you can squish the numbers around?
I would,
And I just wanted to say too that, I came into this only maybe a year ago. And so Katie had already set the budget, but Katie was doing, I believe, more like 20 hours and I am doing, 10. So I also I carried the budget lines across because I would like to see more programming happening and I don't want to hand over a lower budget to a full-time person and say, sorry, you can't do all the things because we cut the budget and now you have to work with this for this year. So that was kind of part of why that number stayed the same. And I can say the park maintenance line, I know you were looking at that one, and what the current amount is in there, and I can speak to that. It's going to change. There are items that are ordered, so that's going to be lower before the end of the year. Just with some needed maintenance that we have to do.
So, Elisa, let me ask you a question. If for the sake of argument, there was a strong majority of the budget committee that said pedal to the metal, let's make this full time and take advantage of it. Is that something that could happen today?
Well, yes and no. The only thing that you have to be concerned about is the passing of the budget in March. The voters have not said they want to do this. So there's that question.
And
but
So-
the
so I don't-
budget
I
in
don't-
March is the whole budget. They're not gonna vote on the rec director.
Well,
Right.
I'm not so sure. I mean, I'm sensitive and you guys, the select board and you guys get to decide what you. think of the voters, but I would feel a little less than transparent if we jacked up or doubled the volume or the tripled the scope of the recreation department and didn't say something about it.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying voters don't vote on single line items.
No, but they would, you tell me, they would vote on whether they want a full-time recreation department. And they could vote an amount less than whatever that increase is, if they said no. And so I'm just sensitive to, I guess, the voters, the budget, the transparency, and the thing. I get it. And so emotionally, I think that there's enough energy to support a full-time recreation director. I do believe that after a cycle, the revenue and the expenses would be such that the impact on the budget wouldn't be any greater tomorrow than it was yesterday.
Right,
That's not my decision.
right. And then the only thing I'm saying is, if you only start thinking about it in May, you won't see the benefit from the summer program
That is
next
true.
year.
That is
It will take a whole other year before you start seeing that benefit.
that is
And
true.
I agree with you, Dimitri, and I think, I think about this all the time with our budget. I don't know, we discuss the money that's left over, but as, department heads, we can't start spending that money until after town meeting. So we're a quarter into the year, basically, before we start spending money.
Right,
So-
and,
So if,
and all summer
Pushing it
camps
further.
fill up in February. Right.
and again, this is not, I'm not gonna beg the question for the select board, 'cause we can't get there with that today. But if we went in that direction and we teed this up and you got the requisite support, you could advertise tomorrow for a full-time recreation director, subject to appropriation. You wouldn't have that answer until after the budget actually passed and the voters weighed in. But you could start the process of checking the field of applicants and gathering up information and getting a determination of interest. And, if after the March meeting, there's a truncation of the budget that you all present, then you have to make some changes. If they resoundingly reject recreation, then you better not do it, in my opinion. You could do it, you better not do it. So, there's those dynamics, but it's an interesting issue.
So in the interest of time for everything we have on the agenda, we're starting to sort of cycle ourselves. Are there, I do have a comment. Are there last comments from the board?
I think that's the license chair, I guess.
So, my comment is that I feel like the rec has always been very chaotically organized. And so it's really nice to see it starting to be more cohesive. But I think biting it all off at once is too fast. We've been hearing for years, we're going to expand programming, we're going to do this. And my suggestion, this is sort of organization, this is beyond the scope of the budget committee, but I guess it would be combine the two programs. It makes absolutely no sense to have two parallel rec departments. It's never made any sense to me. Combine the two and actually say no to some programming. Establish a person, have them establish what they can do within a half-time or a 3-day-a-week position. And then show everybody, look, we're building this program. Now we have these new programs we want to bring online. And we need more resources to bring these new programs that people are asking for online. It seems a little too fast to me to be like, well, we're just going to add a whole lot of new stuff all in 1 year with a brand new person potentially, and have a whole new program built all at the same time. That's sort of where I am at the moment. It makes sense to combine the two, half-time, 3 days a week, build the program from the ground up and really sort of demonstrate, the capabilities and the needs yes, Nancy.
I would agree with you, except that look at what's going on in town. You've got one nonprofit that started with the Lakeside Park, and that's leading to all kinds of recreational opportunities. You got another nonprofit that they're talking about that's going to do pickleball and other stuff, which maybe a nonprofit shouldn't have to do, but the town should be doing. And I read constantly when you talk about towns as recreation being really very much the heart of any town's expansion and identification.
Yeah.
And
I agree, Nancy, but I think a staged approach is what would get us to where we want to be, as opposed to, diving into the deep end on it. That's where I'm at the moment. Go ahead. Mike.
I would point out in support of both of these, that if you combine the departments, now you have a 20-hour rotation. You get some efficiency there, maybe you can bring on some more programs. And then if the budget is passed with the 70,000, with this increase, that person could be offered the opportunity to extend to full time.
We've had experience currently with 2 people between 10 and 30 hours a week, and that this is where we've arrived. So I think that's a chief concern is that, I mean, I agree that bringing them together would definitely bring cohesion, but I worry that it still wouldn't.
I think no matter what, you've got to bring them together, no matter what you've got to find
Yes,
the right person.
yes.
Which is different than what you've done in the past. I think there's no question about that, because obviously 50% of your part-time staff's already gone. So you don't have any choice about that. I guess from a straw poll point of view, if you're inclined, what's the vote of among the budget committee to support a full-time position as soon as practical?
So let's give can we give the alternative of being full-time versus say 3 days a week, 24 hours?
Well, that should be a second vote.
Because the alternative is really, like, having alternatives is what people make decisions on.
So the alternative is not what is
Well, no,
current.
I mean, what we do have now is basically 20 hours.
Well, if you didn't have a majority around this table for a
Yeah.
full time, then you know that they're gonna blend into a second motion, which is,
Yeah.
okay, well, how much do you think you'd be doing?
And you're gonna have to have more than just a simple majority. If this has to go to town meeting, you have to convince the voters.
Yeah.
The budget committee probably ought to go in there full tilt boogie along with the selectmen.
Yeah, let's do a straw poll, just, and this is obviously where people are feeling tonight, not where they necessarily will feel in 4 months or whatever the town meeting is. People who would be, generally supportive of the full-time position, raise your hand. You got 4, and then people who would not be on the full-time,
Something less than that?
something less than that. Yeah, so there we go.
No, I don't think we're ready to pursue this at this point, and I suggest we move forward with our discussion.
Yep. So is there anything else? I don't think there's anything else on the rec budget, but is there any other rec budget items? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you
appreciate
for your
guys,
time.
Thank you very much.
Revitalize and take care. The rec department.
Are we gonna change that number from 70?
Well, we have not, we certainly did not make a decision tonight on that. I think that should be in our action items,
So can you just clarify, you're gonna try to change what number? Or you were thinking about what number?
Well, question, it was just a question, and the answer was, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
I think I might suggest that the board of selectmen might have the same conversation, kind of get a sense of what they might be comfortable with, and maybe in the intervening time, we can come back as we develop this budget and see if we can find a spot that's agreeable to a substantial majority. And I think it's clear that this needs a little more discussion, and I think it should have.
Cemetery. Lisa, what page do we go to for the cemetery?
Cemetery, you have 15 seconds. Sorry.
They're all dead, not going anywhere.
Rec department is
Which-
usually fine.
Lisa, do you know which page we should turn to?
It's 4195, so it is going to be page 32.
Cemeteries.
All right. People who don't know Project is one of our new trustees.
And I'm here because I'm also the cemetery sub,
There is the sexton.
all the hats.
Yes.
Bridget, the second.
Yes.
Bridget has 200 hours in 1 week, so she can do all this.
All right. Again, sort of focusing on major changes. So any items certainly on the table. Do you want to talk? Dennis?
But mainly, we're just trying to play catch up.
Mhm.
We have kind of, I don't want to say active cemetery trustees, but we show up, we're trying to actually kind of drag things back going forward. You would think that COVID would have been a busy time. That's not true. That just meant that we couldn't do things we wanted to, like get signs made. There's some maintenance that needs to be done. And just little things that have just kind of slid. So our next year's budget includes things such as remaking a few signs. Jim Taylor found, like, has the guy that does the signs, another guy builds the signs. So I know that we don't have a lot of big line items, but the increased numbers looks like catch-up. Also, there's a lot of surveying that's done for countryside. Another, I believe that.
Yeah, I can speak to that if you want, Brian. We've been doing, I did get a quote from him. So I know last year we discussed some about the special projects line. So we are resurveying countryside, a couple sections of countryside to create cremation only sections, because that is becoming a more popular, I guess we'll say, form of burial. And so I just got the quote from the gentleman, Chris, who's doing that. So that's about $1,500. Just noting what's going to come off. So that I am utilizing off of this year. Next year will be the different sign work that we plan on kind of fixing up the signs. A lot of them need to be either painted or repaired because of the like the frame of them. So we are trying to keep our eye on things and make sure that, the cemeteries remain the way that we have wanted them to look.
Bridget, what's the Pontem fee feeling? Yeah.
That's the software.
Yeah.
Cards, they use these card files, and they're all digital.
It's a rather large project I have going on that Elisa did. I believe it was Elisa and maybe Mary Quintana did a lot of the work, but just kind of having a gap. Things weren't really necessarily done consistently depending on who was doing stuff. So I have some cleanup to do, which weirdly enough, I look forward to.
Software subscription.
Yep, that's yearly.
Bridget, can you just kind of, I'm not sort of wrapping my head around the resurveying with regards to cremation.
Yep.
I thought that, I remember when, I think of his first name, Plunk was on there, they had done some sort of scatter park.
Yep. That's so when you enter countryside to the right, before you go through the gate, there is a scatter area for those who want their ashes scattered. But a lot of people are cremated and the urn is buried. So currently we have a 4x11 lot. And in that lot, you can have one full burial and you can have 3 cremation burials above. The price is the same no matter what. You could just buy one lot and want to be cremated. So then you're paying $450 and one person's going in there. So this is going to hopefully help make it more efficient space wise, because we'll have sections that are for one single cremation.
Oh,
And you
okay.
won't,
Okay.
yeah. So that's what we're up to.
Make small plots with cremation.
I just had one question about the training line, like what sort of training is that?
So the training, I think we put it under, no, why did we put that under training? So there is training that I could attend. And I'm trying to remember what, Elisa, I don't know if you remember what we were discussing here. The New Hampshire Municipal Council and the New Hampshire Cemetery Association, they offer trainings and I would like to be able to attend some of those. So we're trying to just make sure that it is in the budget so that I can do that.
Right, but I was just sort of wondering, like, what are the trainings actually for?
So cleaning stones,
Okay.
rules and regulations.
Yep.
Burial law.
Yeah, one of the items that came up, one of these that we're looking into that we supposedly there's training about is, so there's currently like this kind of grayish legal area in New Hampshire for if you want to have a green burial. So
Okay.
Where I'm from, you can just bury yourself. As long as you're not involved, you can just be chucked out in your field. Now, things are different here in New Hampshire.
Yep, they are.
So there are things that we want to see if we could add kind of more features like.
Yep.
I find involving is basically toxic waste and then we dump it in the ground in the vault. So, as people become more mindful of this, we just have to keep up with the laws and everything else that would let us add more services.
I think that's a great idea.
But that was one of the things that had come up. I know that was one of the training options.
Did we ever have, or is there any kind of a schedule like that? Certain cemeteries, that there are cleanings done of the stones, or do we have any set?
I
That
drive
would-
around.
That would be a no.
Okay.
I think that we've discussed it. We actually we didn't have anything proper to clean stones with. So I did order that. There's a certain solution you're supposed to be using and tools. So, to be honest, recreation and this is kind of a lot and many hours in my week, but I personally would like to get up there and start cleaning some. And I know our wonderful cemetery trustees have also mentioned that they would be willing to do some of this stuff. So there's not really a set schedule, but I have tried to create a spreadsheet so that I can start seeing a cycle of, we were in, trying to think of a good cemetery, the one that's up on Rice Road, or, just knowing when it was done last, when things were repaired, and so that we can just start keeping track of these.
Is there an inventory in general of kind of the age and location of all of the headstones that ultimately might need some sort of repair?
So I kind of went around and so the DPW repairs them, but actually want to find where the cemeteries are. And so that's step one. I've even unsuccessfully tried to go out to Whittemore.
Yep. Whittemore. Yep. We have yet to find.
It's a single one way out there, but now I know I have directions for the winter, so I can get to the other direction. So we're hoping that next year will be basically a kind of a more structured approach, partially funded by the fact I have children and nothing like child labor to get you out in the summer and to watch them.
I think the Lock Haven Cemetery, the old section, has some of the older stones.
Well, that's-
Need of repair.
Yeah, that is the up there, that's the town cemetery, the really old side of it, and Lock Haven is kind of when you go all the way to the top on the left side, and it's only cremation. And those stones are a bit newer for sure, but yeah, we have, between the sinking of the ground, that one takes a lot of time to weed whack and maintain. But basically our grounds crew, and then our trustees and myself, we do try to kind of keep our eyes on them. And if there's something that's really broken, then we need to fix it. The way our rules read right now, if it's something new and there's still family, that falls on the family and not the town. But as you can imagine, some of the really old cemeteries, that would be really hard to track down at this point. So, and that is one of the signs that is planned for next year, is that Lock Haven and Town Cemetery sign. And you will recently see that a chain was put up to block people from driving up there. We've had some issues of trash being dumped up there, so it's made it a little harder for that to happen.
Good here?
Any other questions?
Anything else?
We've got three more. But what, the only thing it's the cemetery repairs on the budget appropriation report.
Yeah, they often have to shorten them because there's a character limit within the software. That's what probably happens.
Totally fine.
I noticed that as well.
Okay.
All right, any last comments on cemetery? It's pretty straightforward as always.
No, thanks for all the work you guys do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, building and health. Don't introduce yourself unless everybody's met you.
My name is Liam Aaronzweig, and I'm the new building inspector and health officer for the town of Enfield.
Lisa, what page do we go to for building and health?
So building is on page 38, health is on page 47.
Thirty-eight is building inspection. 47.
47 is-
Yeah, board of budget. All right.
It has dollars on the page.
Yeah. Okay, $160. All right. There's everyone else. Take a look at your budget.
Well, the big item that's changed is the law books and the references, line 670, right? So the state is expected to update to the 2018 codes for both the building codes and the fire codes. So I do the life safety inspections for the town as well. I'm the fire chief designee. So the fire code is something that I need to have on hand. And those are, like I said, both expected to be updated from 2015, say, codes up to 2018 codes in the next legislative cycle. So the cost difference was, I went right through the websites for the NFPA, which is sells the code books for the fire code, and the ICC, which sells the code books for the building code. And the state has a list of the code books that they have adopted, and I just went through them and priced them all out. Now, that doesn't count all the fire code books. So some of those available online that I can reference, the ones that are lesser used. But the ones that I use frequently, I'd like to have the book on hand so that I can make notes in the margins and highlight areas and make copies for people of certain pages if I need to. That, yeah.
Anything from the board on these two pages?
I would point out that building permits have been flying. I mean, he's been very busy with building
Yeah.
permits. He's been doing a lot of inspections. It seems like and that is what you'll hear from me. The real estate market has been red hot, so consequently, building has been red hot.
I do have a question. When someone's increasing the size of their house by adding 2 or 3 bedrooms, is the septic system inspected to see if it can support?
That's the state. The state handles all subsurface waters and groundwater. So the state handles septic and wells and geothermal pumps, the lakes, the rivers, that stuff.
That was here. I was wondering if the town did do that. So
Is the state notified if someone, let's say, on the lake is building a larger house on the footprint, but it's gonna have 2 more bedrooms?
So
Is the state somehow notified of this?
in order to approve a building permit, we require the state approval prior to that. Now, that's in the state septic rules require that no structure be built without an approved septic design from them. So that's right in their rules. So we follow their rules.
And just for clarity, that applies everywhere, not just around the lake. So that's, someone wants to put
That's-
an ADU
yeah,
above the-
and
above the
a
garage,
lot-
they have to have an approved septic system for that new bedroom before they can get a building permit.
Well, they don't necessarily need a new septic system. They need a
No,
new
they-
septic design, but they need to go through the state first.
Correct.
yes.
see if theirs is adequate.
Yeah, that's all of it.
So the answer is somebody's always looking at the.
The answer is yes.
Even though we're not in the direct control point.
Thank you. I get a lot of questions about that.
Yeah.
No, I'm all set.
Anything else? Thank you. This is a very straightforward budget this year. And I appreciate your detail and
Thank you.
saying what tools you're buying even.
But it.
Gotta have the right tools for the job.
I want to try to be as precise as we can. In building, you want to give it a price, an estimate that's close to the final cost, and the customer may be disappointed.
You had a good teacher though, Liam. You had a good teacher.
Yes, I did.
All right.
Well, and you know, it's really you like this whole digital measuring thing. So when I've been on a job and, you know, we're monitoring the extent to which a foundation wall is moving. And it's tough to go out there through the years, snow and rain, and actually measure that with enough accuracy. So I said, don't we have a digital, if you want to be able to ping from one point to another and determine with accuracy, because it's moving an eighth of an inch or a quarter of an inch, that's meaningful. Foundations, you know, you don't want to move it very much. So I certainly encourage them to add meaningful equipment.
All right, we'll move on to Rob and planning then. Elisa, what page
Thank
for
you.
planning?
I got page 30,
Thank you.
and there's also a page
Yeah.
58, which we can talk about briefly. That's very small. 30, 30. So thank you guys for taking the time to hear me out, and happy to be here and answer any of your questions. Obviously, it's been a very unusual year, and I'm sure you've heard that as a narrative coming from all departments. Up until July 1, the two land use boards and the master planning task force were meeting 100% through Zoom. We have returned to in-person meetings as of July 1 with the hybrid, kind of like what we're doing tonight with the OWL camera, which we've been fairly happy with. And as you know, indicated in the presentation from Liam, real estate has been very busy. There's been a lot of speculation, but also a lot of transactions, a lot of sales, a lot of things happening. A large part of my day is taken up with just people calling me to ask, you know, if I was to buy this piece of land, what could I do with it? Or I own a piece of land and I'm thinking about doing X, Y, and Z. And so it's a lot of sort of legwork on the front end that may not ever actually go before planning or zoning board. So that's a lot of what my day is like, and it's definitely been very busy. There's been a lot of calls with realtors, a lot of calls with out of town. We've had people buying sight unseen in this town lately, and that's very interesting. And of course, the prices have been very high. We've seen, you know, houses that we have assessed at 350,000 going for $1 million. And so it's certainly going to have impacts down the road, I think. And that's happening all around the region. It's not just here in Enfield, it's happening everywhere. But so I just want to sort of put that out there as sort of a narrative that sort of runs through my budget, but I think it runs through everybody, is that COVID has certainly changed the game. You know, it certainly put a damper on, you know, training and travel and things like that. And so you'll see that in my budget. But in terms of big impacts, and we can go down any lines you guys want to talk about, but I will tell you that a big thing that's been happening here in town is the master planning project, which you guys are probably familiar with. At last year's town meeting, we approved a $35,000 special warrant article to withdraw money from the undesignated fund balance for the project. And we have retained a master planning contractor who is going to do that work for us for about $30,000. And the additional $5,000 is being spent on other stuff that goes with the project. We have a very good and very active master planning task force that was fielded at the end of 2020. Our first meeting was in December. And it's a mixture of planning board representatives. I think we have 3, including Eric from this committee, and then members of the general public. And we did a real sort of deliberate effort to try to get a good broad spectrum of people to be on our master planning task force. You know, we wanted old and young, renters, owners, lakefront hill people. You know, we wanted a good sort of broad spectrum, and I think we've done that. We have even a representative of people that is a seasonal resident, and it's kind of neat there because people are like, oh, why do we want a seasonal resident? Well, you know, our population may go up by as many as 1,000 people per summer because of seasonal. And the guy that's actually representing us right now on that seasonal side is actually planning to make Enfield his full-time home once he retires. So we think we got sort of a 2-for-1 with him, that he's representing both sides of things. And he's actually kind of neat because he also has a very long history. Some seasonal people have been coming here for 40, 50 years. So kind of a neat background with him. But anyways, the master planning task force started in December. They meet twice a month. We have 2 co-chairs. It's a 10-member committee. We have a representative of the zoning board as well. Sealy is on the master planning task force. We have it's a really good group and very active, and they're doing lots of great work. And I think they've been doing a good service to the town. And I think that they've actually, because of a lot of the work that they've been able to do, sort of legwork and gathering data and so forth, saved us money on the actual, meat and potatoes of the plan. And therefore, we're not having to spend anywhere near. When we put it out to bid a year and a half ago to see what it would cost to do master planning, we got a bid for 150,000 from a contractor that said they could help us out. And we just kind of shook our heads and said, no way we're going to spend that kind of money. And we went back to a bunch of them and said, can you do it for, somewhere closer to this number? And a few of them said, nope, we're out. And then a few of them said, sure, but you're going to have to sort of revise your scope of work. And that's what we ended up doing. We had a couple of meetings way back when, and then sort of narrowed in on the current contractor. It's a woman from Heartland, Vermont, who we've worked with in the past. She's done some zoning work for us. She helped us develop what's called overlay zoning district called the Route 4 district about 10 years ago. That is called form-based, which is more sort of trying to come up with design standards for the businesses and buildings that go into that district. So we do have some history with her. She's familiar with our town, familiar with our people. And her company is called Place Sense. You can look her up online. She's a dynamic, unbelievably qualified, capable person. She's working right now for Middlebury, Vermont, Rutland, Vermont. She's done work for Lebanon, New Hampshire, Berlin, Vermont. I think she's probably got 30 or 40 master plans under her belt. And we really like her. She seems like a really good fit. We like the samples of her work. And so she is currently on the job. She started about 1st of October for us. And she is helping us right now with one of the big things we've got coming up is a master planning survey that will go out as this weekend. It's going to be released, and we'll have about 3 weeks of open survey where we're hoping to get people to fill it out and bring it back to us. We're trying to squeeze it in before the holidays because we were told by our contractor not to do it during the holidays because people are thinking about much more important stuff than master planning. But we've got this window now that we think we can squeeze it in and get some good feedback. We'll go heavy with social media, advertising, putting surveys around. We'll be doing electronic and paper copy. And then this weekend, we actually have an event that you guys are all invited to called a visiting session. That's going to be 3 different sessions that you can go to. 2 of them are on Saturday at the community building. They will be in person. And we've got people signing up. There's a website. You can go to enfield-leaps.org to sign up through Eventbrite. We've got people coming to basically, we want to hear your feedback, your input. We're hoping to have representative of, I know the select board members are coming, planning board members, zoning board, committees. We've already met with lots of different committees from the heritage to the energy and the recreation who was just here. So we're hoping to gather a lot of good information. This is sort of, there's an interesting thing I've learned through some of my training. There's quantitative data and there's qualitative data. Quantitative data is numbers. How many people think this is a good idea? How many think this is a bad idea? That's a quantity. What we're going to get from people this weekend is qualitative data, which is quality. It's more like, tell me how you feel. Tell me what your vision for the future is. Tell me what you'd like to see, and sort of start to really zero in on what people are thinking in Enfield. That's what we're hoping to gather this weekend. Anyways, the narrative there is that the master planning process, we've got money in the budget to pay for the master planning contractor, but we've also been spending money out of the planning board planning budget of the town. And so you'll see that one of the big ones that's sort of a major change in my budget right here is the line that is actually the meeting and hearing records, which is, I didn't catch this last year, but when we started having all the master planning task force meetings, somebody said, well, we better keep minutes. We got to have somebody give us some good sort of records of all these meetings. And so, okay. So we went and hired our minutes taker extra hours, that's 2 meetings a month, every month. And so it's interesting, the master planning task force can be busier than the zoning board who meets once a month, or even the planning board who has to meet once a month, but doesn't have to meet twice a month. So our master planning task force has been very busy and has impacted the planning budget, so we're spending some of that money. We do have a very, very capable quality individual now doing our minutes for all three, planning, zoning, and master planning task force. Her name is Whitney Banker. She lives actually about 300 yards from here on Shaker Hill Road. And we have been very happy with her. We had a great one for about a year prior, and then it was kind of a transition to try to find somebody good to be able to do it. Takes a special breed to be able to do it because our minutes need to be very thorough, not so much for the master planning task force, but for the zoning and planning. We need to have really good records because those minutes can be used in court as evidence. And so we really, if you read our minutes for our meetings, you'll see that it's much more specific about what people said, probably even more specific than other boards and committees of the town. I was a selectman for 20 years. Our minutes would be less than a page usually, and it would be a 3-hour meeting, and it was like, well, we talked about this and we talked about that, the end. Well, again, because of the way that we actually may have to go to the Superior Court or other places, Supreme Court for that matter, they really do dive right in deep, and it's very detailed. And we've actually been using the Zoom platform to record our meetings. I think Emily is gonna probably do that tonight with our meetings for this meeting, minutes for this meeting. So that's a big one on there. You'll see some of those things that are expended, I will say, that are mostly related to travel and training that didn't happen over the course of the first few months of this year into July. I did attend a training of the New England chapter of the American Planners Institute just a few weeks ago up in Burlington, which I got a lot of really great information out of. The things are starting to come back in. I think we're sort of all adapting to the new normal, and we'll return to some of those in-person meetings, and we'll be able to travel. We're hoping to, see people in person. So much better to be able to not just attend the seminar like you do on Zoom, but actually to talk to people between meetings and get some, shop talk going, which I think is very important. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Basically, pretty level funded, I would say, except for that increase in the minutes. I did actually trim a few of them that I thought maybe were a little high to try to more reasonably affect what we're actually spending. I will say on the revenue side, I'm really proud of that. We seem to have hit that number. I know you guys don't have those numbers in front of you, but on the planning board fees that we charge for hearing applications and zoning board, we've done a pretty dang good job of budgeting that. And again, that's because we're busy. I think we're right in line with where we thought we'd be. The zoning board has recently changed the fees that we charge to applicants to better reflect costs, true costs. There's a hearing application fee to come actually be before the board, which is sort of a standard flat fee. But then there's also costs associated that we charge through. And so we've adjusted the zoning board fee schedule to better reflect what it actually costs. We have to place an ad in the Valley News for hearing notices. So it's called a newspaper of record, so people can know that the meeting is going to happen. Valley News is charging us more money, and that's where we go there. So we changed the zoning board fees. I'm now working on the planning board. We need to do the same thing. We currently charge $55 for the Valley News ad for the planning board, and it's more like $75 is what the Valley News charges us for that. So we'll have some time at a work session in the next month or two to bring those fees more in line. Postage, as you guys know, costs have gone up on the postage side. We have to do certified mailing, so that those fees may reflect that change, and we'll also change the what we charge the applicants for that. Just going quickly to that other small budget there that sort of sits out there. That was something that when Ryan was here, we were sort of getting rolling to start thinking a little bit more on the economic development side of things. Obviously, COVID really derailed that and has sort of backburnered it a little bit. So there's still a little bit in there. We've got the membership to the what used to be the Chamber of Commerce, where I came from. I was a Chamber of Commerce Executive Director. It's now the Upper Valley Business Alliance, which is actually really exciting. They've done some great work. It's the Hanover and Lebanon Chambers merged, and they've been very, very helpful for businesses and for municipalities through the whole pandemic, because a lot of the stuff is actually being fed through them to get down to businesses, PPP loans, those kind of things. Yes, question.
Rob, the first line.
Yep.
540, could you explain that? There's been no actual any year, but it's still at 500?
Yeah, so one of the ideas there when we were pre-pandemic was to try to do some kind of a, like a marketing kind of piece that would sort of help to sort of represent what is Enfield. We had looked at some of the similar type towns, but basically why choose Enfield? You know, like maybe a little graphic piece or a section of our website with some videos. We talked about maybe hiring an aerial photographer with a drone to go around and shoot some, you know, really pretty scenic shots. So that was there, and we haven't expended it because we sort of, you know, in the time of the COVID pandemic, we kind of put it on the back burner.
I just wonder whether this is needed.
Yeah. So I will tell you, so one thing that I'm worried about, we've spent the money, or we got the money allocated, and we'll probably be spending the money over the next 3 or 4 months. We're hoping to have something for the town to see in terms of master plan by town meeting of 2022, so coming up pretty quick. But that is all going to inform us for hopefully some changes to our zoning ordinance. And so I think there's going to be an expense going forward, and it could be in this next budget cycle. And so this may be something that you guys could talk about. I mean, obviously my advice would be yes, that we should allocate some funding. I know we've talked, Nancy, the idea that there's sort of a continuing expense. I mean, master plan is not just here, put it up on the shelf and then be done with it. That really, if we're being really honest about it, we should be much more.
First line on 58.
Yeah, page
58.
58.
Yeah.
That's the economic development side of things. Sorry.
Are you just basically saying we need to spend this money, we just haven't had a chance yet?
Well, what I'm saying is it becomes sort of a little bit of a war chest for us to actually have some flexibility to do some other things, like what I told you about earlier, where we could do.
Okay, I guess I just don't understand because,
Yeah.
because we know that what the properties are going for, the building that's taking place in Enfield, there's all kinds of activity. I just wonder about needing
Yeah.
an account.
So yeah,
Maybe
so
I just don't know.
as your economic development person, I can say to you this, that you sort of get back what you invest in it. And right now, we're not investing much at
But
all
aren't
in
we
economic
getting back
development.
a whole lot for nothing? I mean, folks are moving here.
Residential, sure.
We're
Yep.
talking about even
Yep.
increasing to a full-time recreation. I'm not trying to be contentious.
No,
I'm
no, I
just not
totally understand.
understanding. I mean, you can market, I mean, that
Yep.
conversation's been going on ever since I've been here.
Yeah,
We still don't have the businesses in town that we hope to recruit. That's never, ever, ever happened.
yeah,
And of course, on the website, you can recruit. I mean, we have down at the Lakeside Park, and we were having the kiosk. I mean,
yeah.
I'm just.
So I would say, to your point that you just made, we do actually have a business here that we wanted, and that's Jake's. We were considered a food desert for a long time, and now I think Jake's food, I mean, it's
Sure,
top
we got
notch,
Jake's and we got the
groceries.
Dollar Store.
Yeah,
Pellegrino's is here and
Yep,
then gone.
yep.
So, I mean, we got Jake's, yeah.
Yeah.
Granted.
so I guess, I mean, it's just a matter of, do we want to be proactive or not? I mean, it's up to you. I mean, it's totally, there's a cost involved, but it may actually have a return. I mean, it may be something that helps to bring businesses in, if we
So,
did some marketing for it.
Nancy does, because you're looking at me kind of quizzically, and I just didn't know if you could help.
So Rob, are you
Yep.
also saying in regards to that, under the public information, like, is there already proposed zoning changes that are going to be made or? yes
No,
or no?
but zoning changes will be informed by what we come up with from the master plan.
Okay.
And there's no doubt about it. I mean, we haven't updated our master plan since 1995.
No, I know.
And there's been a lot of changes in the world
But I
since
guess what
then.
I'm getting at is, through this whole process,
Yep.
if there is going to be zoning changes made and, you know, wherever else needs to be,
Yep.
that hopefully there is gonna be a lot of public information before town meeting, if those are gonna occur prior to that.
Yep. And I've actually been sort of talked to town management and others, committees and boards and stuff, and I just think that, and I throw the example out about assessing. When I was selectman, we used to be this huge fund that we would do a reassessment of the whole town, like once every 10 years.
Rob,
And so
Rob, I'm
we
sorry.
changed that to actually be more of a sort of incremental investment in that. And that's what I'm sort of recommending with master planning, is that instead of being a one big lump sum every 20 or 30 years, that I think maybe it should be more budgeted in as an annual expense. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry to have to interrupt you, but I
Yeah.
I feel like I can't get a word in edgewise.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think what we're talking about here is that you've had $500 on this line for a long time and haven't used it. So if you don't have concrete plans to use that $500, why put it there? I mean, it's only $500, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But do you have concrete plans, or is it just maybe we might need this again?
I've actually had concrete plans before, yes, with when Ryan was here, but as I said earlier, that it got derailed by COVID, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I'll just explain just one little thing in terms of, you know, the master planning process, the feedback we've all had so far. I mean, nothing's certain until you're at the end of it, but it's almost certain at this point with the feedback we've had that there will be pretty large scale zoning recommendations to be made. And from a process standpoint, while the master plan is approved by the planning board, any zoning changes go before town meeting. So the earliest, from a cycle standpoint, that we would see zoning changes that are informed by the master planning process would be the 2023
Oh,
town meeting.
thank you, Eric.
this-
That explains a lot.
Yeah, that's the.
Yeah.
So the hope is to get the master plan done in time to then digest that and create whatever recommendations need to be done. And so that's when you'd see zoning changes before town meeting. It would not be this upcoming year.
Is this increase in the planning board personnel simply the COLA adjustment and raises?
I was instructed by management not to even bring that up. You guys are talking about that. That number is, when it says administrative assistant 20%, that reflects we do have a staff member here that's shared amongst many departments. Like that's what the percentage is. It's not a raise there. That's not. Diane Heed is the staff member that we share. DPW and.
Ask about it.
Yep.
I just noticed a regular increase in that. That's the personnel line. Is that just, so you're not talking about adding another head count there?
Nope,
No.
nope.
That's just a regular increase that we see.
Well,
Yeah.
you said the committee's been meeting with various other committees and commissions. Will you be meeting with the Conservation Commission?
We did have the Conservation Commission come in. Dr. Tice was represented. And we maybe had one other person with them. I don't remember.
I don't remember. But yeah, he came in and discussed the
Yeah.
presentation.
Obviously, when we say meeting with, we're meeting
So
with
you're meeting
representatives. Yeah,
So we're inviting them.
A representative.
they
Well, we-
send who they want. Yep.
We're kind of on the assumption that they're informing their group that they're coming to represent them.
Yeah.
But we certainly can't.
And you're welcome to attend any meeting. They're all open to the public. If you have something specific, you can certainly share them with them anytime you want to come, or send it through me, or send me a letter, whatever you want to do. I'm happy to hear it all. Yep,
Thank you.
Will you be there Saturday?
Pardon?
You're going Saturday.
Mhm.
great.
Can you talk about the repairs and service contract line that's still $2,000? And I'm just wondering how COVID could have prevented us spending that money in 2020 and 2021. 2021, we may not have encumbered
You're
everything.
talking about 6:30,
6:30.
ending in 6:30?
Yeah. Repairs and service.
Oh,
contract.
Yeah.
software.
6:30.
Yeah, that is, we have a subscription to a software, Avatar. Phil knows all about it. It's a multifaceted tool that we use here.
Yeah, I'm not asking about the
assessing.
software, I'm asking about why we didn't spend that money in the previous 2 years. And so why is it still $2,000? Is that just like a accounting mistake?
Yeah, that's one I could actually ask Elisa for, because that one is legacy that was here way before me. So I have been hesitant to touch it because it includes things that are sort of out of my purview, so to speak, like the lease on the copier and the software and those kind of things. We could certainly adjust that if you think, if it's prudent. I wouldn't object to that.
It just looks
So
like,
I can look up the Avatar bill and how that cost is split out and come out and let you know the next meeting.
Yep.
What that is split out to. The copier lease is something that's done through at DPW by the administrative assistant.
Yep.
So I can't really speak to that one.
it looks like the budget isn't being estimated correctly.
It could maybe drop to 1,000 because it looks like the actual last year was only 947. So
Maybe after Lisa
Yep.
gets that information.
It could be just a posting thing, because there are many expenses that get allocated, appropriated.
Yeah.
across the departments.
yeah, literally when we,
Sometimes you have to go back and make sure that
yeah,
the respective allocation was properly posted.
Yeah.
So
when we print on that machine, it literally is coded for different departments. And so, yeah, just what Jack said. Yeah. Anything else? Sorry if I was blabbing on too long, Mike.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, nice to see you guys. And I'm here anytime anybody wants to call me. Happy to chat. Absolutely.
built that 3-bedroom addition.
We have fire department.
Yes.
Fire
we do.
department.
Not that I
What
don't want to
page,
hear from fire department.
Lisa, what page, page 35?
Fire department is page 37.
Welcome back. You didn't get far. I didn't get too far. Just down the road a little bit and then turn around. Yep. So just quickly, it's been about 5 months since coming back to town, and I'm encouraged and I'm also cautiously optimistic. Some of the priorities are being adjusted a little bit from what it had been. One big one I feel is the training. That's, I think we've had I'm gonna say a great deal more training than what possibly has been in the past. Trying to get that information out onto our Facebook page, the town Facebook page, the newsletter, wherever we can get ourselves advertised a little bit so that we can get out there. Hoping to have an open house, which will get people to come into the fire station, see who we are, and maybe get some recruitment going. But we certainly do need to increase our numbers. We're probably at an all-time low. Engine one, the new engine, we just went through and did the final check off with the manufacturer. And we'll have one more go with that. We go to, I can't remember, it's out by Schenectady, wherever the name of the town, I can't remember. But we actually go out, we do a walkthrough of the engine, line by line of how it was ordered and how it's supposed to be built, so that we're sure that we're getting what was anticipated. And the SCBA packs have been awarded for that new engine. That was out of capital fund. We saved about 10 or 12% by doing that. Not really early, but to get that accomplished before the price increase. I don't think there's any surprises in the budget. I will be honest that probably in another year that some of the lines, not the total budget, but some of the lines are going to look different. I think the total budget as a whole in general is very adequate, but some of the lines I think do need to be adjusted.
make those changes. I don't have the history to make those changes at this point. So I don't want to just throw at the wall and see what sticks and see if it works. I'd like to have the history and the opportunity to do that with that history.
So Phil, you're saying you're at an all-time low for firefighters. Can you just sort of give us some insight about, like, has there been any new members at all? And
We do have two new members. They came before I did, but they're enrolled in the level 1, level 2 academy. They're actually doing it in Vermont.
Oh, wow.
And the reason that doing it in Vermont is it costs us $150 per person versus New Hampshire, which is about $1,200. The states reciprocate back and forth they're both what are called pro board tested, so they come out with the same testing, same skills, same. Vermont, and I don't know how they do it, but their academies are grant funded. I'm not sure where they're getting the grant. But we're in the Mutual Aid Association. Any department within the Mutual Aid Association typically invites and allows people to, attend throughout, the region. We were fortunate to get two of these two folks in. And next time it will probably not happen that way. There may not be a close one in Vermont to take, for us to take advantage of as we get some folks. So we're going to be back to the New Hampshire. New Hampshire's been slow in recovering from COVID and doing in-person classes as well.
So where are we at with actual numbers compared to, say, a year ago?
I think we're down some, but it's hard to say because I think we're still in that rebuilding process stream. We've had some folks that haven't come for a while. But I don't know that they have come and seen what the changes are.
Phil and I have been kind of working on kind of the overall roster, the number of people that actually show up, the frequency or the percentage of times that they respond to calls, to get a sense of what the kind of the net functional department is. Because it's less than the actual numbers of people who say, hey, I'm a volunteer firefighter. Well, if you haven't shown up for a year and a half, it's kind of tough to call you that. Now, on the other hand, someday we may need that person, but we're trying to.
We're trying to evolve this, and one of the things that I'm going to do right after the first of the year, we are going to establish evaluations. It is a town department. I want to sit down individually with each person and be able to say by the hours of, okay, we haven't seen you. Here's the changes that we're making. Does this fit with you or doesn't it fit with you? So that we know how we can progress down the road. Again, in 5 months, I've not been able to do that. I think we're in a better place than a year ago, and I'll leave it at that.
I mean, obviously, you want people who, not to be too glib about it, but you want people to show up.
Right.
But also the people that you want to show up, you want to be trained to the level that you want of them. And that's an interactive process because it is still volunteer. You're expecting a lot of these people to do stuff on their own time, even though it's a call department. And so we're trying to gently move towards an increase in the training standards and expectations. At the same time, growing the responsive number of people in the department so that you actually have a better, stronger response generally.
One of the big concerns when I first came in, and I kept hearing it was, well, everybody's going to be trained to the level 1, to the level 2, to the highest standard. No, I don't believe in that. We don't have enough people to do that. We can't expect that to happen. But I do expect that the person that's running the engine, driving the vehicles, running the engine, pumping the water, to be trained at the highest level in those conditions. And they may not be able to go into the building or have ever had any want to go into the building, but they need to be able to support the people that are. Because to me, that person running the engine, I want to make sure if I'm on that line, I want to make sure that they're right up here. And it goes the same with auto extrication. We just had 2 days of swift water training. We've got 5 people that are now swift water trained, rescue trained. We have an auto extrication class coming up this weekend. We've invited other departments, and I think we're gonna have a total of about 18-ish.
And it's great fun.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
we're hiring
Gonna be in the
2
auto?
academy instructors that are doing it on their own time. This isn't gonna be an academy class, but these guys are trained to that level. They're gonna come and do the class. Anybody that wants to come and watch it is gonna be roped off. We ask people stay out of it, but we're gonna be happy to explain what people are doing, why it's being done. I guess best way I can describe it is I think we're trying to take some baby steps to get to a point.
Yeah.
And again, I think the budget as a whole is adequate and will do what we need. But you may see some adjustments in those lines in another year that I'm not able to give to do at this point, to give you that at this point.
And
But-
what is the, like when a person gets called to a fire, what is the reimbursement rate for that?
It goes in levels by firefighter through chief officers.
Oh, okay,
And it's like 1475 to 17.
okay.
So it's not huge money.
No, I certainly wasn't
It's not huge money.
thinking that. And I'm just wondering, I mean, is that something that we have increased over the last few years, or are we?
It's gone up very small and very incrementally. $1 here, 50 cents there. That may have to be something that is strongly looked at at
I mean, I
another
guess I was
point.
just thinking, in trying to get people to kind
Yeah,
of.
That's definitely gonna be part of it. The folks that are taking the level 1 class, we do pay them their hourly rate. They're driving themselves, they're spending the time away from their
Right.
families. We feel that that's an important encouragement to them
No, I definitely.
to do that.
Yep.
We pay for trainings. Just need to get people there. And one of the other things that we have found is food. People love food. So some of that is coming out of the training budget as well. We'll buy pizza this weekend. But people like to eat.
And we have had a conversation, we have had a conversation about how often we want to get paid right now. I think we get paid a couple times a year.
Quarterly.
Quarterly.
And everybody, we, at one of the meetings, we asked and everybody was happy with that.
Oh, I
They
didn't
like,
realize that.
So, yeah, on my department, we get paid every other week.
Right.
And,
well, they like it right before, we end our
Yeah.
year right before Christmas.
Oh,
They get a, they
Kind
get
of
a
a
Christmas,
quarterly
they look at it
bonus.
as a Christmas bonus, and then they get a summer vacation
Alright.
paycheck, and,
yeah.
to go on vacation.
Mhm.
But that was, asked, and they were happy with it.
Okay.
Randy.
Yeah, Phil, I respect everything that and understand everything you're saying. I just had a couple of questions, and maybe you probably have addressed this, but I wanted to
Sure.
confirm 114 and 430 at the very bottom. Just looking at the budgeted versus the actuals, is that an instance of maybe not wanting to make any changes yet?
I don't think we can, Wendy, and
Okay.
especially, in the 114. There are gonna be some more dollars coming out of 114, as I was
Okay.
saying, with the auto extrication, we do have to pay the instructors.
Okay,
The 430, that's a tough one. That depends upon
yeah,
what fails in the buildings. I'm in the process of getting quotes on new heating system for Union Street. And we're talking about splitting it up so that we're able to put a wall up so that we keep the exhaust out in the bays, and the meeting room doesn't have to be inundated by that every time, and have a separate heating system to kind of balance the temperature as well, to not have to keep the bays as hot. There's some money in one of the capital funds which was approved last year for replacement of heating system. But the quotes that I've seen at this point, that's not gonna be enough. And again, can't get anybody to do it this year anyway, so that's, that's gotta be looked at as we get prices.
It's a great, I've seen some great changes, don't I? mean, Very regularly. Say,
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, I try to stop in just to check to see if anybody's complaining.
Well, it's a change. The department's gone through a lot of transportation, as you're all aware. It's been a hotbed of opinions for a long, long time.
That's a diplomatic word.
Yeah, but it's really great. And I'll tell you, auto extrication really are a lot of fun. You get an old car, you smash it up with a bucket loader, you put a dummy in it, and you get the fire department, the EMTs there, and you actually get practice propping up the vehicle, opening up with the jaws of life, working with the EMS folks, stabilizing the patient, extricating, doing the coordination so that you stabilize the person, keeping life, while the fire department is stabilizing the vehicle, opening it up so you can get there, bring the person. It's a great choreography. And with Route 89 and so forth, and just auto accidents, at the end of the day, it's meaningful whether if you get your own vehicle alive. So it's a great training. It's a lot of fun.
Where's this training going to take place?
It's gonna be at Hughes Park, 9 to 4 on Sunday. We're gonna have about an hour prior to go through the safety and go through with the instructors and so forth. And part of where the increase in the training is going to be is that there has been some equipment that's been purchased. That equipment line is going to see some pretty good hits. We've got an opportunity with the new engine pumper that's coming, the rescue pumper, to outfit and set that up so that that's going to be a premier piece. And with that, I think we're going to see more involvement with Lebanon and Hanover from having it set up correctly and having the training to do it correctly. And I know we're being recorded, but Enfield has been bypassed for a number of years by some of our surrounding towns because it hasn't always had adequate training to, and I honestly feel this, and this is not being as a criticism to anyone, anything, but you've got to be trained because we can't stand the liability if you're not. And I think that's the bottom.
I know for myself, training has been like this long discussion for a long time now, so.
Yeah, no, I'm thrilled to hear that. It's the first time someone's come in and said, well, we just did this training, we're doing this one.
I like seeing the $1,800 expended
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
And if you have a chance, if you haven't had a chance, if you go back and look at select board meetings, I try to keep the board apprised of some of the activities, the training, the number of people, the number of calls, the type of response, to show the transition, to show the growth of what's happening. To show kind of the evolution of bringing the department up to a level that we all want, everybody. You don't want to wait 20 minutes for an engine to get over here when your fire is doubling every 30 or 60 seconds. So it's all good stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Any other budget questions or comments? No?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, for all the work you're doing.
Hey, it's a blast, it's a passion. It's not much.
What?
Not in the moment. Thank you, take care.
Thanks,
All
Phil.
right,
Thank you.
Public comments. All right.
Public comment, the public is not here.
Okay, so other business, I just have one quick thing, the regional groups, organizations, subcommittee. I think that, I wasn't 100% sure, I'm pretty sure we decided to just have the same group as before at one of our early meetings. My understanding is the packets are ready,
Pick them up.
so Diane's gonna be at our next meeting in 2 weeks. Would you guys be ready at the same
Before
meeting?
that, we have to meet.
Would 2 weeks be adequate time for that?
You want me to, I usually organize.
Outside
Oh, I think you
Yeah.
should, Shirley.
Pardon me?
Yes, the outside agencies, there's a
I
group
think
of
you
4 that are
should.
gonna go through all of them and just come to us with a
Okay.
recommendation.
Okay, great.
And we meet with Diane
Yeah.
beforehand.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we go through
Was it-
all of them.
Are you part of that this year?
Yes.
And you were elected?
Mhm.
So it's the
Last
4
year
of
was
us
my
and
first
Diane.
year.
As you look at.
So would
your-
you like me to check with Diane like I usually do to see what's available
Nancy and
time?
But if you guys can
I
commit
am,
to
I picked up
2
my
weeks
stuff.
from now, that would be
Okay.
great.
As you look at that list, my recollection, I saw briefly the fact today, that one of the agencies didn't get any funding last year, it was public health, by mistake.
They didn't apply.
Yeah, they missed the opportunity. I got a call from Dr. Parisi, and he said, geez, is there any chance we, just oversight, we didn't mean to not have the money. And I couldn't really.
After this pandemic,
Well,
I
see,
think
that's
the
a
need
great
for
thing
public
with
health.
this meeting with Diane. She fills us in on those
Yeah, she's
details.
very good at that.
It's great.
I think it was just an oversight.
I think I'm hearing that we shouldn't hold against them, that 0 from
No,
last year.
people
we
do.
shouldn't
No.
hold that against them.
The only,
And we do that.
Because we were looking for it.
we have always held the line, somebody has to apply
Yep.
in order to
Right.
get funded.
Right.
And so if that's what, if you don't apply, you don't get it. If you apply the next year, you get consideration. So, any other business from the committee? Entertain a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
You and I were talking today.
police,
She's got a lot of drawings.
let's see,
She does a lot of drawings.
it's gonna be police, ambulance, Diane will be here with a bunch of administration stuff.
Okay. She was telling me today. that
But the big
she's
ones will be
drawing.
police and ambulance.
Those are pretty easy.
I think it's.
Ambulance.
Ambulance is usually pretty straightforward. Police,
Police won't be hard either.
I actually think the police might be down a little bit.
Yeah, I think
So, Jack, I was gonna ask you, I saw where the advertising for an officer, did someone leave or that's just a new addition?
It's not a new addition, I think there's somebody left, I'm trying to think who, there was, I think we had a female officer that left.
Yeah.
Because they moved,
Oh, okay,
and I can't remember the details.
all right.
They left the area,
Oh, okay.
How long ago was that?
Little dolls.
might have been a month ago or
Okay.
two, month or two.